Oh dear. Oh no, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to talk about that. Oh no, come on. Today, what we are doing is we are responding to an article published on the Hockey News. Yes, this was on the Hockey News. I'll leave a link in the description to this piece published on the 15th by Sam Stockton. And the title of this Detroit Red Wings themed piece is this: could a Mitch Marner to the Detroit Red Wings trade make sense? From the Silky Mitten State, if the Maple Leafs move on from Mitch Marner this summer, could he be a worthy trade target for Detroit? Now, before we dive into it, before we go into what the article says, I want to go out there and just use my Red Wings fandom to try and answer that question myself. Because when it comes to Toronto Maple Leafs superstar forward Mitch Marner, while yes, I do think it's fair to say that if you cut and paste Marner from Toronto to Detroit, never mind the trade return, whatever, you just put Marner onto this roster right now in Motown, I do think it's fair to say that Marner would automatically be the most offensively talented player on the team. Right? Like, sure, Lucas Raymond projects to be a player like Marner, maybe even a bit more defensively responsible and consistent, but he's not Marner yet. Larkin, okay, great. Larkin has been a fantastic player, has been a leader, has been the heart and soul, the chugging blood flow of this Red Wings team, but he's never had 90 points in a season. Marner's done that 3 times. Alex DeBrincat, okay, he has not shown off the capability of being in that same territory of a player. Could he grow into it? Who even really knows? Patty Kane is like the only guy you could challenge, but he's not even guaranteed to be sticking around with Detroit anyway. So, when it comes to the Red Wings' current construction of who's on the team and Mitch Marner, you could very well say, and I don't think with any hesitation, that Marner is the most talented offensive piece that would exist on this lineup. But when it comes to the price, when it comes to what it's going to take, when it comes to the circumstances, okay, Mitch Marner is making $10.9 million a year till the end of next season. 27 years old right now, and that next contract that he signs, it's going to be a big one. Because Kyle Dubas was so adept at overpaying his guys, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, all these players got extended dollar amounts that were huge. Sure, it's easy for Marner to go out there and say, hey, I'm a better player now than I was when I signed that contract initially, so I'm going to get something in the 11.5 range. I'm going to get 12. I'm going to reach McDavid money. Whether or not you think he's actually worth it, that's not the problem here. The problem is, he very realistically can ask and maybe even expect that kind of dollar amount past 2025. So if you're Detroit and Steve Yzerman, if you get a guy like Marner, let alone, caring about what the trade price is, you're going to have to find a way to make this guy stick around beyond 2025, because whatever assets it is that you give up to get Marner in the first place, it's going to be huge. You're not going to have the capability of just getting Marner to be a 2024-2025 rental. This would have to be a longer-term thing. So, with that in mind, does Stevie Yzerman have himself the salary cap flexibility to do that? I get it in 2025, it's not now, so things can change between now and then, but everybody looks at Marner, and sure, while there is a talented player there who produces 90-plus points every year, he could get 100 if he gets a bit luckier. Everybody looks at Marner and talks about him as the overpaid, overstayed superstar that just cannot show up when he needs to show up the most. How he's a regular season player who does all these things and he gets all these points, but once the playoffs begin, that's when he stops being effective. And you can say it's a matter of the Toronto Maple Leafs and their system. You could say it's a matter of the top superstars not having a killer instinct. It might be a combination of the two. But is Mitch Marner the kind of guy that, based off of these variables, you would feel is an appropriate add in Detroit, even if he would automatically be the top offensive capable guy on the team? My hunch, I'd probably say no. I think the Red Wings could benefit from a guy like Marner, but the effects of what he could bring, I don't know if it's really helping the team out in the ways that they want in particular. I don't know, is that a weird way to say it? I'm not too sure, but let's go back over onto the article and read what it is that Stockton goes out there and writes about On the latest episode of the Silky Mitten State, my co-host Connor Eargood and I discussed the possibility of the Red Wings trading for Marner, should the Leafs elect to move on from the embattled homegrown winger this summer. The article says this actually has been written about before in the hockey news. This is what Connor Eargood went out there and said in a previous article. Speaking of money, Marner's contract would hamstring Detroit for years. That extension he would probably have to sign to get a trade done would be on the high end, probably past his current $10.9 million. His scoring rate has only increased since his last extension, and his defensive play has maintained its quality. Essentially, he got way better at scoring without becoming a liability. That's a skill that gets players 8 figures any day of the week. Such a high price tag would put the Wings in a similar squeeze that the Maple Leafs are feeling when it comes to furnishing roster depth. He would be the highest paid player on the roster by far, depending on the Sider and Raymond extensions this summer. The available cap space for depth players would be significantly lower, and the Red Wings' strategy right now is to win through depth while its stars marinate as prospects. Picking up Marner would be a pivot in a new direction, one with a lot more baggage. Marner might be an intriguing player who could be headed to the trade block, but it doesn't seem like he'd be the greatest fit for Detroit in their current state. He's talented but expensive, and his acquisition would likely come with a trade-off of moving other star players to make the Wings competitive. Now, I'll admit, this is kind of like it for the article. They don't really talk too much more about the situation. There are a few extra paragraphs and then a link to their podcast, but I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read the rest of the piece yourself. Even so, but with Mitch Marner being tossed out there as a potential Red Wings trade idea, I don't know, man. It just does not feel right to me to even think about it. Like, this also might be kind of weird to say, but I feel like if Mitch Marner wasn't a Toronto Maple Leaf, it would actually be a bit easier to think about him as a potential Red Wings target. Like, something about him being a Maple Leaf and so impactful on that team kind of taints the idea that I have in my mind mentally of what Marner is. And just thinking about him being a winged wheel guy, yeah, no, I don't know if that really makes sense in my mind. But then again, I guess you could say same thing about Patrick Kane, right? Like, that guy, I don't think anybody could have envisioned him in a Detroit sweater even as far back as a year ago. So, who knows, like, things can change very quickly in this business, right? So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you're a Detroit Red Wings fan, what are your opinions on the idea of a Mitch Marner trade to Motown? We also hadn't talked about this, but what exactly would the price be? I mean, we have been having all these conversations about how the Leafs need to trade Marner, they need to trade Tavares, they need to trade Riley, they need to do all this stuff, but, like, we haven't really discussed what any returns could be, to be honest. Like, what is the Marner trade price? 2 firsts on a good prospect? I mean, the main stereotypical idea everybody always tosses out there is a first, a roster player, and a prospect. So, what? If you're thinking about a Detroit Red Wings first-round pick, maybe not their, 15th overall pick. Actually, no, 15th is not that bad. 15th overall pick, let's just toss it out there, plus a roster player to fill up that role. I don't know, Andrew Kopp. Just toss a random name out there. And then, let's just say a top prospect like Jonathan Berggren, or maybe somebody else who actually wants to be a Red Wing for a bit. Is that a price that gets it done for Marner? Honestly, I say no. Like, the magnitude of player that Marner is, I don't think that first prospect and roster player package is enough. So, what gets it done? I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you're a Detroit Red Wings fan. What do you think would be the be-all and end-all decision for a Marner trade? And if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, what is it that you would want from Detroit in some sort of a move like this if it were to happen the way it's being laid out here? Marner to Detroit with some sort of an extension that will probably hamstring the team for the next decade, but you get Mitch Marner, who's a very good player. So what's the pros and cons on that? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Article will be linked in the description as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.